翘氣，立住掙扎。
Hello, lady, we're going for a ride.
Oh my God, is he nuts?
He's no nuts. He's crazy.
Molaram, prepare to meet Kali in hell.
Before audiences ever saw Indiana Jones dangle from a rope bridge or face off against a cult leader, Temple of Doom already had a reputation for being cursed. This wasn't just another sequel. It was darker, weirder, and so chaotic behind the scenes that the movie nearly broke Hollywood's rating system. What started out as a pulpy adventure film quickly turned into a storm of accidents, bans, walkouts, and sheer madness. And somehow, through all of that, it still made Harrison Ford look like the toughest man alive. Most fans remember the minecarts, the ripped-out hearts, and the endless bugs. But the real story of Temple of Doom, that happened before the cameras ever rolled. From a title so grim it sounded like a horror movie, to Harrison Ford fighting through an injury that would have sidelined anyone else, to a ratings battle that rewrote Hollywood's rulebook. This film was dangerous both on and off the screen. So let's go back to 1984, when Indiana Jones stepped into his most infamous adventure and uncover the shocking truths behind the movie that almost went too far: Temple of Death. Before it was called Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, the movie carried a name that sounded straight out of a horror flick: Indiana Jones and the Temple of Death. And honestly, it fit. George Lucas and Steven Spielberg wanted the follow-up to Raiders to feel darker, more dangerous, and way more personal for Indy. The early drafts had child slavery, human sacrifice, and those infamous heart-ripping rituals. With all that, death felt like the right word, until they realized just how far it pushed things. The title didn't sound like a globe-trotting adventure anymore. It sounded like a straight-up horror movie, and that scared the studio. Families who had flocked to Raiders of the Lost Ark might run in the opposite direction if they thought they were buying tickets to a nightmare. Spielberg and Lucas needed a compromise, something that promised danger without going full horror. Temple of Doom struck the balance. It still carried menace, but it had that pulpy, comic book punch that made Indiana Jones what it was. In the end, the death title was buried, but the darkness of those original ideas that stayed very much alive on screen. The prequel twist. When audiences sat down for Temple of Doom, they expected a sequel that picked up right where Raiders of the Lost Ark left off. But George Lucas and Steven Spielberg had a different plan. Instead of moving forward, they went backwards, setting the story in 1935, a full year before Indy ever chased the Ark of the Covenant. Why? Because the Nazis had already been used as the perfect villains in Raiders. Lucas didn't want to recycle them for round 2. He wanted a brand new threat, something unfamiliar and even scarier. By going back in time, they freed themselves from the constraints of World War II and opened the door to a completely different kind of danger: the Thuggee cult in India. That prequel setup also gave Indy a fresh edge. This version of him hadn't yet faced his biggest trials. He was rougher, less heroic, and sometimes more selfish, motivated by fortune and glory instead of saving the day. In Temple of Doom, Indiana Jones wasn't the polished hero yet. He was unpredictable, flawed, and darker, and that made this adventure feel way more dangerous. The writer who quit. After the success of Raiders of the Lost Ark, it seemed obvious who should write the next Indiana Jones movie. Lawrence Kasdan, the same guy who helped shape the first one into a classic. But when George Lucas and Steven Spielberg pitched him their ideas for Temple of Doom, Kasdan's reaction was instant. No thanks. To him, the story was just too dark. Instead of desert treasure hunts and witty banter, this one dove straight into nightmare territory: underground cults, enslaved kids, and people having their hearts ripped out on screen. Kasdan later called the script mean-spirited, saying the grim tone just didn't appeal to him. Rather than fight over the vision, he walked away. Lucas and Spielberg didn't back down, though. They hired husband and wife writers Willard Huyck and Gloria Katz, who leaned into the darkness even harder. They cranked up the danger, kept the violence, and doubled down on the heavy moral stakes. The result: the most brutal, divisive Indiana Jones story ever made, one that still sparks debate among fans today. Short Round's lucky discovery. One of the best parts of Temple of Doom almost didn't happen. Ke Huy Quan, who fans know as Short Round, wasn't even supposed to audition. He was just 12 years old, tagging along with his older brother, who was the one actually trying out for the movie. While they waited, casting directors noticed something unusual. Kay was helping his brother with line readings, showing him where to stand, even coaching him on how to deliver the lines. And the crazy part, he was stealing the show without even realizing it. Intrigued, they asked Kay to step in front of the camera himself. He had no acting experience at all, but the moment he opened his mouth, everyone in the room knew he had something special. Spielberg was blown away by how naturally this kid could keep up with Harrison Ford, cracking jokes one moment, hitting emotional beats the next. In one afternoon, Kay went from the kid waiting in the lobby to one of the most beloved sidekicks in movie history. Short Round was born by pure accident, and fans have been quoting him ever since. India bans the movie. At first, Spielberg and Lucas planned to film Temple of Doom right in India. The government was even on board, ready to open up stunning locations that would have made the movie feel incredibly authentic. But then officials got a look at the script, and everything changed. The story showed ritual sacrifices, poverty, and slavery in a way that Indian authorities found deeply offensive. They flat out refused to let the movie be shot there unless Spielberg rewrote huge chunks of it. That wasn't going to happen. So the entire production had to pivot. Instead of filming in India, they packed up and moved the shoot to Sri Lanka for the jungle and village scenes, while all the temple interiors were built on massive sound stages in England. It cost them time and money, but Spielberg and Lucas stuck to their vision. The irony? Even though Temple of Doom is set in India, not a single frame of it was actually shot there. Harrison Ford's hernia. Halfway through filming, Harrison Ford felt a sharp pain in his back. Doctors told him it was a herniated disc, an injury that usually shuts an actor down for months. For most people, that would have been the end of filming, but Ford, he pushed through it. For weeks, he gritted his teeth and kept going, shooting scenes that didn't strain his back too much while letting his stunt double handle the heavy action. Eventually, the pain got so bad that he had no choice but to fly to Los Angeles for emergency surgery. Here's the wild part. Just a few weeks later, Ford came back, and not just for dialogue scenes. He went straight into action again, including the brutal rope bridge climax. Spielberg later admitted that most productions would have shut down completely if the lead actor got hurt like that, but Ford's sheer determination kept the movie on track. Indiana Jones was tough on screen, but Harrison Ford proved he was just as tough in real life. 80,000 live bugs. If you thought the bug chamber scene in Temple of Doom was hard to watch, imagine having to film it. The crew didn't fake it. They brought in around 80,000 live insects, giant cockroaches, stick bugs, beetles, you name it. For Kate Capshaw, who played Willie Scott, it was a literal nightmare. She was terrified of bugs, but Spielberg needed her in the middle of them. To calm her nerves, she reportedly took a Valium before shooting, but even that didn't make it easy. Day after day, she had to scream, crawl, and act while swarms of insects climbed through her hair, under her clothes, and across her skin. Some bugs even had to be glued in place so they wouldn't crawl away from the camera. The result was one of the most memorable scenes in the entire franchise, a mix of comedy, horror, and pure disgust. Fans laughed, cringed, and covered their eyes, but for Capshaw, it was less movie magic and more personal torture. The rope bridge nightmare. The finale of Temple of Doom gave us one of the most nerve-shredding moments in the entire franchise. Indy clinging to a rope bridge as it's hacked in half above a roaring river. On screen, it looks like one seamless, death-defying stunt, but in reality, it took 3 countries to make it happen. The main bridge was strung across a 200-foot gorge in Sri Lanka. That's where Harrison Ford and the stunt team braved the real height for wide shots that sold the danger. For the close-ups, though, Spielberg wasn't about to risk his stars. Those were filmed safely back in England on a soundstage, where they built a replica bridge just for the actors. And when it came time for the money shot, the bridge snapping apart and bodies flying, that was done in California, with a miniature so detailed it still fools audiences decades later. It was a logistical nightmare, but the editing stitched it all together so perfectly that most people never realized they were watching 3 different shoots blended into one, a global effort for just a few minutes of pure adrenaline. PG-13, rating born. When Temple of Doom hit theaters in 1984, parents were furious. They'd bought tickets to what was supposed to be a PG-rated adventure, but instead, they got child slavery, ritual sacrifice, and the unforgettable scene where Mola Ram rips a beating heart out of a man's chest. Moviegoers flooded the MPAA with complaints. Some argued it was way too disturbing for kids, but at the same time, it wasn't explicit enough to deserve an R rating either. The movie had slipped right into a gray area that the rating system didn't know how to handle. Spielberg agreed. He admitted there needed to be something in between PG and R, and he personally pushed for a new rating. Just a few months later, Hollywood unveiled the now famous PG-13, a warning to parents that a film might be too intense for children, but still fair game for teens and adults. The first official PG-13 release ended up being Red Dawn, but Temple of Doom, along with Spielberg's Gremlins, are the two movies forever credited with forcing Hollywood to change the rules. Indy didn't just rewrite adventure films, he rewrote the rating system itself. Critics versus audience. When Temple of Doom premiered, critics didn't hold back. Many slammed it for being too dark, too violent, and too relentless compared to Raiders of the Lost Ark. Some said the nonstop pace felt exhausting instead of exciting, and others accused it of leaning on shock value, pointing at the heart-ripping ritual and child slavery as proof it had gone too far. Even Spielberg later admitted the movie came out darker than he intended, influenced by his own personal struggles at the time. For a while, Temple of Doom was treated like the black sheep of the Indiana Jones saga. But here's the twist. Audiences loved it. The movie pulled in over $300 million worldwide, proving that fans were still eager to follow Indy into danger no matter how intense it got. And over the decades, its reputation has shifted. What was once dismissed as too grim has now been embraced as one of the boldest and most daring entries in the franchise. Critics may have tried to bury it, but Indy's second adventure refused to stay underground. Temple of Doom wasn't just another Indiana Jones movie, it was the wild experiment that changed Hollywood forever, from a title so grim it sounded like a horror flick, to a story so dark the original writer walked out, to a shoot filled with bands, injuries, and swarms of real bugs. It was chaos behind the camera every step of the way. But out of that chaos came history. The movie gave us Short Round, one of the most iconic sidekicks ever. It created the PG-13 rating, reshaping the entire way films are judged. It delivered some of the most daring stunts in the series, from that insane rope bridge to 80,000 crawling insects. And even though critics tried to bury it, audiences turned it into a $300 million hit that fans still argue about to this day. Love it or hate it, Temple of Doom proved one thing. Sometimes the messiest, most controversial movies are the ones that stick with us the longest. Indy's second adventure wasn't safe, it wasn't polished, and it wasn't predictable. And maybe that's exactly why it's unforgettable. So tell me, does Temple of Doom deserve its reputation as the franchise's darkest chapter, or was it secretly the most daring and brilliant one of them all? Drop your take in the comments, and let's settle the debate.